Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war taking place between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. We are now in day 144 of the ongoing conflict, and again, we are continuing to see the tide of Russian forces slowly sweep towards the targeted cities of Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, Bakhmut, and along the Donetsk western bank as well towards Seversk. I have received a couple of questions in the comments section inquiring about the MLRS system, specifically the M270 multiple launch rocket system that the Ukrainians would be receiving from some of the NATO nations, and obviously it is relatively the same system that is the HIMARS. The only real difference is the chassis in which the missiles are placed upon. With the M270 system, it is on a armored or a lightly armored tracked chassis, which gives it the ability to go cross-country a bit better than the HIMARS. It also allows it to fire 12 of the HIMARS missile systems versus 6 on the HIMARS. And it also would have the capability, if the ATACMS were to be delivered to Ukraine, then it would have the ability to fire 2 ATACMS as opposed to 1. So I think within the context of this conflict, the HIMARS is probably the road-based wheel chassis is probably more effective in terms of being able to rapidly shoot, scoot, and relocate these systems, given the abilities of Russian forces to conduct counter-battery missions, and then obviously the ability of Russian tactical air assets as well to attempt to track some of these vehicles. And in all likelihood, again, the wheeled version, although it has half the firepower, is probably more ideal. I would anticipate that if these M270s, the tracked versions, are indeed deployed to the front, the Russians will probably have probably an easier time locating and then destroying those systems at a certain point. The wheeled systems, there's certain things you can do with that system to make it more covert and tactically hidden than you can with the tracked version. But nonetheless, the firepower on the tracked version, and again, it all depends really on the type of missiles that are being handed over to the Ukrainians. And it appears that the Ukrainians are receiving some of the more advanced GPS-guided systems with some of the more extended range that is being handed over to Ukrainian forces. Now, again, it's going to be very, very interesting to see if the Ukrainians receive the ATACMS. That could be, I'm just saying, that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back in regards to Russia seeing this conflict in a different light. And what I mean by that, I believe at a certain point, the pressure by NATO putting in forces into the Ukraine and deploying these advanced weapon systems, especially if we were to see an attack on the Kerch Strait bridge. I do know in a lot of the some of the pro-Ukrainian content providers, they're very much proponents of a strike against the A290 and the Kerch Strait Bridge, which we are looking at right here. And actually, what I wanted to do real quick is where you, the viewer, can actually see what we're looking at in terms of the Kerch Strait Bridge. So not an easy target to hit. You'd think a bridge is something that you could take down relatively easy, but bridges are much more difficult. to destroy and render unoperational than you would think, especially when you're launching a precision strike. You have to use a very, very accurate system, and usually what you want to do when you're striking a bridge, especially the bridge of this design and size, you really want to use a laser guided system that is very, very precise. You can use, in theory, a GPS system, but again, you're probably going to be a bit off in terms of possibly actually striking the bridge. So you really need that laser designator that is illuminating the target, and you'll have a much lower CEP, and you'll have a much higher propensity for striking metal upon concrete, as opposed to hitting the open water, which would really render the attack ineffective. And again, we have not seen the Ukrainians as of yet, but if they do and they were to use some of these precision strikes to try and take out or crater the causeway around the Kerch Strait Bridge, you could see, I would believe at that point, we could see a possible escalation of the conflict, quite possibly with Russia directing its attacks, quite possibly, on NATO assets. And then obviously we all know where that eventually ends. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying an attack on that sort of Russian asset by Ukrainian forces could send us into the abyss of global war, or bring us closer to the abyss of global war. Does the Ukrainian forces have a legal right to strike the Kerch Strait Bridge? Absolutely, and they do. But they are also aware, and as is NATO is aware, of the ramifications that could bring. Again, I think right now the NATO, the United States, United Kingdom, Poland is really right now, they are pushing the envelope on what Russia will tolerate. And again, we could see things really spiral out of control at some point. But in terms of the current battlefield gains by Russia, we really continue to see this slow moving tide towards what it eventually wants to accomplish near Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. I believe we're going to see another operation to the west of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, possibly some sort of an envelopment action like we did observe around Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. That became ultimately a very successful operation in terms of the cauldron that was created around Lysychansk, and then the closing of that cauldron, or that salient that was created, that defensive salient by the Ukrainians. Probably not the best strategic and or tactical idea. It really kind of you can really detect the odor of the political element of this conflict intervening in what went on around Lysychansk and Severodonetsk. I believe that the Ukrainian military wanted to withdraw much earlier towards Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and along the main Sloviansk to Bakhmut highway, and set up additional defensive positions, and not allow its forces to be trapped, as quite a few of them may actually have been trapped in the Lysychansk cauldron or pocket. But what I want to do right now is just kind of back up where you, the viewer, can kind of see what has occurred over the last several days in terms of, so this is back to July 4th. This is after the pocket has collapsed and Russia had seized control of Lysychansk. And again, we're going to watch now how this very slow but effective drive is from east to west. And the beige also indicates areas contested or controlled by Russia as well. This map tends to be more oil is more or less pro-Ukrainian, so you will have a bit of map bias in terms of who controls what. But nonetheless, this is what we are using. And that's it. And again, we do know that there has been what we would define as a semi-operational pause. That pause has not been a complete pause, but a limited pause. And we are continuing to see limited Russian attacks, both on the ground, but more importantly, continued Russian deep operations, specifically going after Ukrainian command and control, and Ukrainian and the use of tactical air assets, including cruise missiles, being used deep inside of Ukrainian territory. We understand now that one of the strikes that occurred in western Ukraine, and this strike was obviously very, very sensitive for Ukrainian forces, in the fact that they are reporting that civilians were killed, and in all probability, unfortunately, civilians were killed. But at the same time, the Russians were reporting of a meeting between high-ranking Ukrainian military leaders and quite possibly certain elements of foreign entities that could have been meeting at this locale when it was struck by Caliber cruise missiles. And there is a good chance, being reported by the Russian side, that senior leaders of the Ukrainian military may have been hit in this strike. And it is also possible that foreign elements may have also been targeted in this strike as well. Again, we cannot confirm this. Obviously, once the war ends, and probably a significant period of time after the conflict, a lot of this information may be declassified, and we will have a much better eye into what occurred in this ongoing conflict, to include some of these obvious, very precision strikes that are being made by Russia on some of these command nodes on Ukrainian forces. Look, the Ukrainians are not going to announce that a sensitive military target was successfully hit by the Russians. That is not the modus operandi of Russian forces Ukrainian forces right now, and neither it is of Russian forces. The only way to confirm if, for instance, we have received reports of these higher-ranking Russian generals that have been killed in action by some, at times, some deep strikes by Ukrainian rocketry attacks. But again, nothing has been officially announced, other than from time to time you'll hear about a funeral or something like that, which then may confirm said individual or individuals that may have been KIA'd in action. But that is pretty much it for today. Again, we're watching this very, very closely, and we will continue our very, very disciplined coverage, of our day-by-day coverage, not only for you, the viewer, but also the historical record. I would think that if we could go back in time to, say, to World War II and receive really kind of live informational feeds about what was occurring with maps and so forth, day by day by day, that would be very enlightening, I think, for the modern person looking back at history. But again, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Leave comments in the comments section. Hit the subscribe button. Support the channel if you wish. And again, that does it for today. I may do another video later in the PM. I'm continuing to watch the situation in East Africa as well, the Horn of Africa as well, and we'll do additional coverage on that locale. But again, thanks for joining us, and again, more to come. Good day.